thank you for joining the session entitled Empowering Faculty Excellence, Leveraging a Playbook and Checklist to Drive Online Faculty Engagement and Student Success. We are happy to have you here at the 33rd Annual ADEIL Conference. My name is Dr. Teresa Leary-Handy, and I am your host. Today's session will run for about 45 minutes and include a time for Q&A at the end. Whether you are joining us from down the street or across the globe, we are so glad you're here. Please use the chat for any questions or tech needs you may have, and we are excited to see you here at this hour. I have the pleasure of introducing our team, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Let me mute. Okay, there we are. I think we're getting a little feedback from someone. So
Hi everyone. I'm
going to toss it over to Dr. Benjamin Pearson, and he and the other speakers will introduce themselves. Thank you so much.
I was a little early there. Hi everyone. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the Department Chair for General Education and Social Sciences at Excelsior University. I have colleagues here. I'll let Mary go next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Berkery, Department Chair for Liberal Arts and Director of Strong Start at Excelsior University, and Amy.
My name is Amy Erickson, and I am a part-time faculty member at Excelsior University.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. Okay, so before we talk a little bit more about our faculty playbook and checklist project, we want to just situate you about what Excelsior is and who our students are. So we are a not-for-profit university based in Albany, New York. So it is currently 6 o'clock and my kids are running upstairs getting ready for baths. So hopefully they don't make too much noise tonight. Our courses are primarily online and asynchronous, primarily in an 8-week format. And our students are primarily returning adult learners. You can see there on the chart that the average student age is 35.6 years old. 77% are working full time. We have 40% who are either active duty or veteran military students, and we have a wide variety of degree programs, but we are probably best known for our associate's degree in nursing program. We have a sizable nursing program. And I wanted to highlight here what our mission is, because it's really critical to what we're going to be talking about in a moment. And that's Excelsior University provides educational opportunity to adult learners with an emphasis on those historically underrepresented in higher education. Excelsior meets students where they are, and that's really important to us, academically and geographically, offering quality instruction and the assessment of learning. And I've highlighted quality instruction there because that's our focal point today. Of where we can make improvements to make sure that students' experience from start to finish is really high quality and outstanding. So here's our faculty model, and you might be familiar with models like this if you are coming from someplace like University of Arizona Global Campus or Southern New Hampshire or other large players in the online space. So we have department chairs like Ben and myself. We have full-time faculty in the variety of disciplines that we have programs in. And then we have part-time faculty like Amy who are located anywhere in the country. And the way that our courses are developed is that we have master course shells that are created by a subject matter expert in the discipline and an instructional designer. And then they're replicated across sections for various instructors to be teaching it. So if you had a course like Sociology 101, it would be created by one person, and it might run 6 separate sections in a term, all taught by 6 different people, but they're working with the same content, the same textbook, same syllabus, same discussion prompts and assignments and so forth. And so if you're familiar with this kind of course setup, it shifts the instructor's role from one of being the old-fashioned sage on the stage, right? The person lecturing to the classroom and determining the assignments and the syllabus as they go, to the guide on the side. So what that means is that the role shifts to contextualizing the content that already exists in the course, whether that's by adding in current events or how the ideas and topics relate to one another, or using their own research and expertise to add to the content that's there. It means asking questions to prompt students to think in new and deeper and different ways, providing meaningful feedback on their work as they go to allow them to improve week to week. And then, of course, offering support and guidance. And, as our keynote speaker said earlier, let's not forget, leading with kindness and care. All right, so before we jump into how we wanted to sort of shift and improve this instructional model, we want to hear from you. And Ben put this in the chat as well. So you might already be there, but you can either use your phone to use the QR code, or you can go to menti.com on your computer and type in 2509-3614. or you can put it in the chat if that doesn't work for you too. And the question is, what do online asynchronous students need most from their course instructor? So in an environment like this, where there's no Zoom sessions for the most part, the students are primarily working asynchronously online with a course instructor, in the role that we just mentioned. What do they need most? What is it that the instructor's role really should be in order to enable student success? Let me pull that up. We've got a couple coming in. All right, thanks everybody for adding that in. I keep putting them in if you have them. So flexibility is really important for adult learners if you're working with adults. Understanding that due dates, can't always be followed when your kid's in the hospital or when you, are suddenly deployed as an active duty military member or something. Kindness, of course, is always important. Seeing them as the expert of their lives. I love that one. Actionable feedback is really important to be able to scaffold that learning over time. Emotional as well as instructional support, proactive outreach, and feedback toward learning outcomes. I love the idea of proactive outreach and not just waiting for the student to come to you when they need help, but identifying and seeing those early risk indicators, the kind of flags that we might notice in a student's behavior or in their assignments that would indicate that we should be reaching out to them. All right, thank you for all of that feedback. That really mirrors the way that we feel as well. At Excelsior. And why is this important? So, I hit the wrong thing. There we go. So what's most important here is that, more than any other staff member at a university, more than academic advising or the registrar or, student financial services or anybody else on campus, the instructor is the one who most significantly impacts the individual student's learning experience and their experience in college generally. And that's still true online. The majority of their time in an online asynchronous environment is spent in the classroom. And those two bolded quotes there's been research that's been done to show that college graduates who identified with either of those statements, my professors at college cared about me as a person, and I had at least one professor at college who made me excited about learning, they showed a demonstrated positive impact on their academic success while they were in college, their social integration, or what we call the sense of belonging, both during college and afterward, identifying more as an alum. And they experienced upticks in their well-being, both during and after college, and their career prospects afterward as well. And what's important to us here is that everyone should identify with those statements, right? Everyone should be able to say that they had a professor at college who cared about them as a person, and that they had a professor who made them excited about learning. And so we want to make sure that that's a fundamental part of the student experience, regardless of which courses you're taking and which instructors you're encountering. All right, so that brings us to the project that we were working on here at Excelsior and what the core goals were, first and foremost, what we were hoping to achieve. So first, we wanted to increase faculty engagement in the online course room in order to drive student engagement. If we can get students in the classroom more often and acting and taking action in the classroom more often, they're more likely to succeed. We wanted to impact student retention, both term to term, year over year, all the way through to degree completion, as well as their success in particular courses. We wanted to impact equity and access. We wanted to ensure that every student has a high quality experience on an even playing field and that no student should slip through the cracks. There should not be any student at the end of the day who can say, I didn't have any instructors who cared about me as a person. We also wanted to impact quality improvement. So Excelsior's been doing the online world for a really long time, and we have a lot of instructors who have been with us since the beginning. And they're amazing instructors, but we don't want the learning of what instructional best practices look like to have stagnated in the Blackboard world, or before Blackboard we had WebCT, and before WebCT we had CD-ROMs. So some of our instructors have been here since the time of the CD-ROMs. The world of online education in 2025 looks a lot different now. And so we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to engage in professional development and really reflect and think about how they can improve their teaching each year. And then finally, we wanted to recognize and share best practices. We wanted to first understand what our best, most impactful faculty were doing well, celebrate that success, and then share what they're doing well with everybody else so that everyone at Excelsior can rise to the level of our highest performers in the classroom. All right, so here's how we attempted to achieve that. So the first stage of this was creation of what we call the faculty playbook. It was created in conjunction with a new faculty orientation course. But as most of our faculty weren't new, we didn't think they would all go through an orientation again. And so this was a playbook that covered what we wanted instructors to come away with and what were both requirements, things that you must do in order to keep your job and you required in the contract, and what are the best practices? What are the most effective instructors doing? So the contents of that playbook included our teaching philosophy statement, which is really centered around the pursuit of excellence, embracing diversity, fostering innovation, promoting integrity, helping students be career ready, and serving society or social responsibility. And then we got into the teaching requirements and best practices. So when we're talking about sharing our expertise, how can you as the guide on the side share your expertise in the discipline you're teaching? That includes posting in the discussion board, posting announcements with supplemental information, creating video overviews at least once a week where you're really showing that you're a human being in the classroom, even though it's asynchronous, and you're adding in your expertise and tips and tricks and advice that you would give to students for the upcoming week. Personalized and timely grading feedback, making sure that all students are receiving really individualized substantive markup of their work, and that they're getting it in time to make improvements for the following week. 8-week courses move really, really quickly for students. We're asking a lot of them to be able to do it in 8 weeks. And so we're asking a lot of our instructors as well to be able to turn around the grading in a way that it's helpful to students in that kind of format. Communication and responsiveness, both in terms of checking email and course messaging for messages from students, setting up office hours so that students can contact you, and then also responsiveness to us as well. If Ben or I has a student appeal coming in and we need to get a hold of an instructor, making sure that we have a way to get a hold of that person and resolve student issues quickly. Then we have student success collaboration. So that's what we consider collaboration with other areas of the college to get to our own end goal, which is everybody's end goal, which is the success of the students. So whether that's raising flags to academic advisors of students when they're struggling or when they're absent from the classroom, working with our data team to understand the trends in their classroom and in their field in general, working with places like accessibility services and tech support and so forth, all on the same page of helping student success. And then finally, we want to give our faculty information about how to get more involved in the community, whether that's professional development opportunities, offering pre-term webinars every 8 weeks, and other ways they can get involved in clubs and honor societies and so forth. Then we have these appendices, right? So we want to make sure they know who to contact when something goes wrong or when they need something. We want to make sure we're providing examples of best practices. So not just you should ask questions in a discussion board, but here's what it looks like when you're effectively asking questions of a student's post in a discussion board, and here's how you can really drive at that deeper level of understanding. And then Appendix C here is the faculty checklist. So that's the next item here. So the checklist was a bigger project that we engaged on in a collaborative way across the university. So this was a pretty big undertaking. We have all these staff members here, part of that group of people holding up their new hoodies from a retreat at one point. It was a collaboration with our colleagues in nursing and health sciences, as well as our area, which is liberal arts and sciences, the academic affairs team, provost team, bookstore, library, everybody who's involved in that student experience to say, what does it look like when effective teaching is occurring, and how can we communicate that to faculty so that they're not just going to read a document one time and go, okay, but they're actually going to integrate it and change their daily, weekly, termly practice to improve the student experience. All right, so what it contains, the checklist, is a list of required standard activities in all week. So things that you're going to want to do every single week of the term, whether that's grading in a timely manner or being responsive to discussion board posts or posting a weekly video. Things that you want to do before the term starts so that students aren't walking into an empty shell on the first day of the term. Essential activities for student success, so raising flags, as I mentioned before, which is the way that we alert academic advisors when there's a student at risk. And then what we do to wrap up the term to make sure that students have access to extensions, that we're grading on time so that they can get their transcripts and graduate on time, and so forth. This is a very intimidating PDF and not the ideal way to do this. Nobody's going to use that as a checklist. Your eyes glaze over looking at it. So what we did instead was add it to a project management software called Monday.com that the university uses. And that goes out to faculty as a digital checklist so that they can click off each week to see which items they're doing, where they have questions, and make sure that they're following that week by week and not just something that they're putting aside. So Amy is the expert in this and not us, but I do understand that everybody has to row in the same general direction for the boat to move, right, Amy? Is that right? Yeah. So the idea that was next is that we needed to get everybody rowing in the same direction. And we're a big university, and we have a lot of part-time faculty and a lot of full-time faculty. We wanted to make sure we were really getting buy-in for this process so that it was going to work the way we were intending it. So that looked like creating a frequently asked questions area, first and foremost, to figure out what's confusing about this, what doesn't make sense according to your experience. We offered live and recorded trainings to faculty before we launched it. And myself and a department chair in nursing went on what we called a roadshow to all staff at the university to explain to them why it should matter to them. So human resources and financial aid and fiscal and all the various parts of the university that aren't directly connected to the instructional experience, but are still connected to the instructional experience because that's why we're all there, right? It's about student success. So understanding how they could help and why it mattered as a project at the university. And then, as I mentioned before, building that Monday.com process so that it could be done digitally and it could be a part of the weekly process for all instructors. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Ben.
So this all looks very good, and you may be asking yourself, yes, but what kind of results did it have? Did this work? Was it effective? And I'm very happy to say that we have done some initial early analysis of the results, and several different metrics and indicators like student course evaluations, grade distributions, and student feedback all suggest it was a very effective and meaningful process that made a difference. So on to the next slide, Mary. So this is a little bit of an intimidating graph here. This is a radar plot, and it shows you student perceptions of faculty performance and class quality across 8 different metrics that we use for faculty evaluation. One of them is overall student satisfaction with the course, starting on the top, going clockwise here. Overall student satisfaction with the course. The instructor encouraged me to engage, provided feedback for improvement, provided timely feedback, instructor presence, building a relationship with students, challenging them to do their best work, and where I recommend them, kind of that top line, were they a good instructor? And you can see here, it's a little hard to see. We measured this on a 7-point Likert scale. The dark blue line is our calendar year 24, all the student responses in calendar year 24. The orange line is our spring term 2025, and the green is our summer 2025. So you can see here we implemented the checklist starting in spring 25. And you can see a pretty, I think, small, admittedly small, but noticeable and consistent positive improvement across every metric we have for student perceptions of instructional quality. So students were noticing a difference and seeing it. That was reflected in their evaluations of the courses. It's approximately a 1% improvement on every metric. And it suggests that we are not only seeing improvement, but also sustaining that across terms. I have the same information here for our department, liberal arts, not just for the whole university. Basically the same story. We had a higher starting point, but had a little bit of backsliding after that first term. So it shows the importance of consistency and follow-up on these things. We also looked at student grade distributions. So all the student grades in a given term, what percentage of those were A's, B's, C's, D's, F's, W's, AW's. A W for us is when a student intentionally withdraws from a class of their own volition. An AW is when we withdraw them manually because they have not been engaged in the class in any way, haven't been participating. So AWs tend to be students who kind of aren't involved in the class, don't really ever engage, and kind of just fall away. And we see here, it's a little hard to see on these small graphs, but we see here a significant decline in D's, F's, W's, and AW's across the board and sustained across multiple terms. The biggest declines are in W's and AW's, which I think really shows that these attempts at early intervention with students and giving them a strong start have made a difference. Students who previously would have been not engaged in the class, got an F or a W or AW, are more likely to stay engaged and more likely to be successful in the long run. And then the next slide here is basically the same thing just for our department. It's the same pattern as before, essentially. So we see this across multiple departments, across the entire university. and sustained across multiple terms. So what are our takeaway points from all of this? We see significant improvements in student perception of faculty quality. We see significant improvements in student academic outcomes. Our biggest improvements were actually in the weakest areas, like building a relationship. That's the one that was lowest for us and saw the biggest numerical and percentage increase. We see sustained improvement over time, a little bit of backsliding here and there, but generally improvement we're sustaining. And we see that early intervention to help students who are struggling or not engaging seems to be paying off and having positive results.
Find my mute button. Okay, so Ben is awesome in creating aggregate data here for us to look at the overall student outcomes, but there's something to be said here too about the individual impact that we have on students, and you can see from stories like this one. Anybody who's taught in a classroom, whether it's in person or virtually, has undoubtedly received a note like this that reminds you that the effort that you're putting into that work of grading, of answering questions, of providing support and encouragement, and relentlessly raising flags and trying to get the student across the finish line, it has a meaningful impact. And it's not just in metrics, and it's not just in whether they register for next term or even whether they receive their diploma, but it's in their lives, right? And that's really, at the end of the day, what matters. So I'll just read this really quickly. It always makes me choke up a little bit. It's a student from one of our first year experience courses who said, "I laughed and then I cried when I saw your comments on my paper. I can't tell you how much this class has meant to me. This is my first real class in 15 years, and I've spent my entire life feeling that I am street smart, but not school smart. Each time I do well, I am baffled. My insecurities say, well, maybe it was an easy assignment and everyone did well. Thank you so much for your encouragement, positive feedback, gentle criticism, and responsiveness. I know you may not always realize the impact that a class has on a person, but I have gained so much more than content and skills. I am raising my wounded inner child decades late and becoming whole." So, I feel like we created this student to say this exactly the right way, how so many students feel and aren't able to articulate it so beautifully and poetically as this student did. But she's a real person. And she, obviously testament to the instructor of that course, of the impact that course was going to have on her life. And that's an 8-week course. All right, and now we're going to turn it over to Amy to talk a little bit more about the teaching faculty experience with this new playbook and checklist.
Great, thank you so much. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm an adjunct faculty at Excelsior, and I've been there since 2012. And so this was a pretty big change from what we've been doing in years past. So it was pretty exciting to be a part of this. First, I think one of the really critical parts of this program's success was the communication piece that the department chairs engaged in. They did an outstanding job of communicating the expectations, and this was done in synchronous meetings. When questions came up. If anything was confusing about any of the content, it was updated and they let everyone know. So the communication piece, I think, was really a big part of this. Finally, these Mary and Ben are my department chairs, so I can speak to them. But they were also so gracious when they were communicating these expectations. They thanked us at every opportunity. And I think something that really connected with a lot of faculty was they acknowledged that this was going to be a lot of work. It's going to be more work, more than we were used to, but they really encouraged us and were so gracious about it and reminded us that this work was going to be worth it. The other thing, I found the faculty playbook really helpful in terms of organizing my week in the online classroom. And I was really inspired by the weekly check-ins because we always had to tick these boxes. And so, you always want to, achieve or exceed those expectations. So I always wanted to be able to check yes to those boxes. So I thought that was a really great way to motivate people and to help them get organized. And I have a tendency to get kind of overly focused on the 1 or 2 classes that I'm teaching. So once you see all of these intervention strategies, calendar reminders, engagement opportunities, and administrative expectations. It reminds you that you're part of a bigger picture that can kind of get lost in the day-to-day if you're really honed in on your one class or one or two classes like I can get. And it reminded me that it's not just about students succeeding in my class, it's about them succeeding in throughout their entire degree program. Um, Finally, our teaching and learning analytics coordinator shared the remarkable results of this initiative that you've seen now from Ben and from Mary. And that was so inspiring. And it served, I think, to create a real sense of belonging for all of us, whether you're adjunct and you're someone across the country, or whether you were sitting there in Albany. We really felt like we were part of something bigger, and we were working together, and that we were succeeding. So it's been a really great experience, and I'm so grateful that you guys decided to discuss it here. And I will turn it back over to one of you. I'm not sure who's going next, but
I think Ben is, but I did want to say this too first before we move on, Amy, and that, when I'm talking about the best quality faculty we have who have the biggest impact on the student experience, that's Amy, right? So we want everybody else to come up to Amy's level. And so for in some ways, I think this process has probably had the least impact on you, because I know you were already doing all of the things that we were asking of this, right? So it's just quantifying it and putting it into your daily process. But there were a lot of people who were down here, right? And so we wanted everybody and every student to have the experience of having a class with Amy Erickson, even if they can't be so lucky.
So finally, we are an institution committed to continuous improvement and learning lessons from our processes. As Kate points out in the comments, we do want to iterate and improve as we go. It's very important to us. So here's some lessons learned from the process so far, things we would share with someone else who's thinking of trying to implement a similar project at their university. So we definitely, there's always a trade-off between speed and kind of planning and kind of laying the groundwork. And we definitely sided with speed in this process. We actually went from idea to implementation in about one semester. So it was a very quick process, very intense process of developing this, of planning it all out. Now, in an ideal world, we would have had more time. And if we had more time, I think we could have done a little better job of socializing faculty to get to know the instrument sooner, kind of understand the expectations sooner. We did have a lot of meetings and a lot of communications, but I think the further in advance you do that, the more helpful it is. Faculty get more comfort with it, have a little less anxiety, a little more sense of being on board. Along with that, because we did move very quickly, there were some logistical rough spots here and there in the rollout, little things that didn't work quite as we'd hoped they would, and it was very important that we take feedback on those things, listen to that feedback, and make changes, often very small changes, but little changes to the playbook, changes to some of the ways we implemented that or how we tracked things to make it work more smoothly and work better for everyone. As Amy commented on, we really learned the importance here of early, frequent, and consistent communication. My dean likes to say, communicate 7 times in 7 different ways, and that's really what we tried to do here. So it was important to all be on the same page, to communicate as early as possible, and then to kind of be consistent, to frequently reinforce the same message across the whole university, that we're all doing this, we're all on board with it, we want to support you to help our students have success. Along with that, there's follow-up. As the data I showed earlier demonstrates, we have seen a little tiny bit of backsliding since spring 1. I think it is important to kind of consistently engage with faculty in communication and coaching and mentoring, help them understand the expectations, help them to get to that place we want them to be. So it's not just, do this. It's how do we work together to get you there? How do we all work together to get all of us to that place that we're trying to move to? Along with that, we did have some faculty concerns, especially early on. Some faculty expressed anxiety around increased workload or around some faculty don't like doing videos, for example. It's just not their favorite thing to do. And they had some anxiety around recording themselves on camera and talking to students directly. And so, we try really hard to listen to those concerns, to be empathetic, to hear them, but always keep the focus on the end goal. The end goal is what is best for the students? What's the experience our students need to have to be successful? How can we give them that? And so, my message to faculty has been basically, the end goal is definitely already, laid out here in some ways, but the way we get there is flexible. Let's work together to achieve that goal together. It's really important to share and celebrate good news. As Amy mentioned again, we've tried very hard to really give faculty credit and kudos for their good work, to share our positive data around the impact of this change, but also to acknowledge faculty who really have done a great job, who've been outstanding, gone above and beyond, and to give them public recognition for their incredible work. So I think it's really important. When you're asking more, you also have to be very generous about crediting those who are doing the work for the incredible work they're doing and for their incredibly important role they play in moving toward that goal of greater student success, greater student experience.
All right, so we can jump into questions if anybody has one. And Ben, I think Ben answered Kate's question there about iterations of the playbook. We did go through several iterations of the playbook, especially after the first term of rollout. And we will continue to update it. We don't currently have a regular cadence where we're saying we will do it at X, Y, and Z points in time. But we really should actually, because it should be a living document. And we are always hearing feedback about it. But we did, in the first 4 terms of release, I would say each term we were adjusting a couple of little things.
One really important change we made. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
What really important change we made early on was that the playbook checklist, faculty could go in and submit yes/no answers to various items they did or didn't do that week, but there was no place for comments. And we realized comments were really important to have, right? Because they wanted to give us context. So, why did I check yes or no? What's the reason behind it? People feel a little more anxious when they're checking no, even when it didn't even apply to them that week and they didn't need to check yes. They feel bad checking no. And so helping them understand that we're listening to your whole perspective. We want the whole big picture, not just the one simple answer. And that was, I think, a really, really important change we made in the first term we ran it. Sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, no, thank you all for such an engaging presentation. I love the faculty-centered approach to work on how you can improve student success. And I think that kind of finding those little nuanced approaches really helps our faculty become stronger, which means our students become stronger. So I think that's amazing. So thank you so much. We have a few minutes for questions. We have about 8 minutes. So please feel free to put them into the chat if you would like. I can read them aloud or the presenters can, and we invite you to engage for the next few minutes on your own. I'm going to actually also put the link to the survey in the chat so you all can have that as well. So again, thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like there's a question here from Kimberly. How do we recognize our adjunct faculty? So a couple of different ways. We like to recognize them publicly. So we have pre-term webinars before each 8-week term. And at each one we do shout outs for each of the department chairs. And I like to choose different people each time that I've noticed. So when we're checking in on the checklist and when we're reviewing courses and we're seeing how people are doing and how they're growing and improving, that I'm choosing people who are demonstrating, going above and beyond, or improving from their previous practice in a public way. But we're also doing a lot of private kudos and recognition, and that's really important too. Is as we're checking in on classrooms, each Friday, Ben and I are sending notes that sometimes it'll be, I didn't notice a video announcement from you this week, but I want to recognize the amount of work that you've put into grading and how quickly you're grading and how much substantive individualized feedback you're grading. So we're trying to make sure that we're always kind of providing that positive reinforcement behind the scenes too, in addition to the public facing. Anything you want to add to that?
It's been really important I think to have that balance, right? To both praise and also offer coaching and suggestions, but to do it in a collegial and empathetic way. I think that's made a big difference in the process. I see a comment from Kate. What prompted the change in evolution? Was there a particular catalyst? I mean, I think part of it is just always wanting to improve. But I think like most schools, retention and persistence are very important to us, right? Our bottom line and our mission really depend on students being successful. Students not only entering the university, but then completing classes successfully and graduating. And so we wanted to raise those numbers, and we've seen some of that already in doing this. So that's kind of part of the bottom line that's driving it all.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just to reiterate that, it really was truly about persistence and student success. And there wasn't a particular catalyst, but that's an area that we've targeted for growth at the university as a whole. And there's a lot of different interventions. Part of my work is in Strong Start, which is new students and improving persistence rates there. So there's been a lot of initiatives there too. But every time it would come up within academic affairs in the college, it really became critical to think about the majority of a student's experience is with our instructional faculty. And so there has to be ways to move the dial there, right? So what can we do to improve the instructional experience to improve at the end of the day, the student experience and persistence numbers?
Is it okay if I just unmute?
Yeah.
Yes,
Of
please, please do.
course. Yes.
I'm like, just it at like you New Yorkers, it's like 5:30 my time. So I'm just taking up the kitchen table while my family's like, can we eat dinner? So a couple of questions was one, what did coaching look like in the past terms? It sounds like you guys are in there pretty regularly and communicating with folks. Did you need to go beyond that during these terms? What did that kind of look like? And then my other question is, what's next for this program? Is it potential expansion into other departments, further evolution or iteration? And now I'll be quiet.
Those
Yeah,
are
so
those
the
are great
coaching,
questions.
yeah, go ahead, Ben, you go first.
Oh, I'll talk about coaching. You can talk about iterations if you want to. So, or not, if not. But the coaching, at least for me, so I have a lot of faculty I oversee, a lot of part-time faculty, and I can't be in every classroom every week by any means. Um, but I make an effort to do 5 faculty a week. Basically, that's how I'm working through this. And we have identified we have the larger checklist of items, but they're not all equal priority. Some of them are more important than other things are. So we're prioritizing those we think are the most important things like that. Active engagement in discussions, quality feedback on student work. Those are the ones we think are most important, and we're focusing on those first. And so I will review a class in our asynchronous course shell, and I will write up an email to the faculty, just kind of letting them know my thoughts. I try to have a lot of praise in there about what they're doing well, keep it positive. I may have some suggestions too about things that I think they can improve on or how they might do that. I also try very hard to give them concrete suggestions and tools to help them. So if videos are an issue for them, we have some trainings on how to do videos better. We have some tools that are pretty easy to use with good instructions, and I'll share those tools with them as well. And the goal is to get through all the faculty and kind of rotate back through them again. Really, it's to go through everyone. So we're kind of it's a work in progress, at this point, but we're seeing a lot of great work.
So in terms of the question on the future of the project, there's a couple of things that we're hoping to do. One is just continual improvement and making sure that we're listening to the kind of frustration, friction areas that people are experiencing and improving the actual tool. Another thing that we had identified at the start of this project that we really wanted to do, and we just didn't have the technology bandwidth to, was to develop a better system to identify students who are struggling for the faculty. Something like a red, yellow, green kind of score that faculty could see and see a variety of data points. And we have a fantastic IT team that's using AI to kind of take different elements of a student's file and do risk scores, essentially, to say this student in your course is at a yellow risk score and that should trigger such and such intervention, to help take a little bit of the manual legwork out of doing that intervention, but still make sure that the interventions are being tracked and being taken when we perceive that students might be at risk. So that's kind of a longer term project because we need to invest more technology into it, but I think ultimately it'll make things a little bit more efficient. And just generally, we want to make this as smooth and as efficient for faculty as we can, but we also want to continually improve what the end product looks like. So, a big part of the lift, you heard Ben talk about how we wanted everybody to be making videos. And at first, the videos, just anything you want to do that shows you, like just use your phone and record and upload it to the classroom, and we can see that you are a real person. And And the next stage of that, I think, is to make it actually look nice and to put a little bit more effort into it. And not that they have to be polished videos with, graphics and editing and stuff, but, we're seeing a lot of videos where people are kind of speaking like this, like they're reading off of a script, right? And so how can we provide professional development opportunities and tech support for people who are a little reluctant to do some of that stuff to improve the end quality, to make it look a little bit better. And there's elements of that in each one of the requirements, and just continually making sure that we're using professional development to help people improve, and then putting that back into the checklist.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate the presentation. That brings us to the end of our session today. I have put the link for the evaluation in the chat, so please use that to give your feedback, and we hope to see you at our next session. And I believe we should be heading back to our main room where we will hear more about the ADEIL history. So join us there. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you, everyone.